We can. So welcome everyone. So let's just settle into our meditation position with breath and awareness, grounding ourselves in the body. Starting for the crown, and just with breath and awareness, touching all the different parts of the body. Opening and releasing, relaxing any place where we have tension, where we have clinging. Going to talk about that a little bit more. Trying to discover that way how we cling to things in our mind. So, easy ways to see in the body how we create tension, anxiety, stress in the body. So, we just start to release the grosser level of mind through breath and awareness through the body. So, a couple of minutes, just going all the way out and outside, inside, like touching acupuncture points and using the needle breath and awareness just to release, relax, and open. Then from that place, we're going to do the 9 round breathing just to open up the mind a little bit more. Quality, spaciousness, and clarity. It's the conventional nature of the mind, clear and knowing. So we always want to keep opening that up. We need that as a basis for investigating the deeper psychology of the mind. So good way, is because mind and wind consciousness is always alongside this kind of wind energy, grosser and more subtle levels of wind energy we have in our body, air energy. So let's just 9 round breathing. We take the first finger of the right hand, closing off the left nostril. Inhale through the right, long, slow, deep breathing. And then we hold it for a couple of counts and exhale through the left nostril, moving that finger from the left to the right. So 3 times. Inhale, long, slow, deep breath, holding. And slow exhalation through the left 3 times. Same on the opposite side, closing off with the first finger of the left hand, the right nostril. Inhale through the left, exhale through the right, keeping soft through the back of the jaw. Opening up through the belly, a little bit deeper as we breathe in And we exhale, softening through the belly more. And through both nostrils. See if you can get the breath go a little bit deeper, opening up the body and mind a little bit more. So in that space, for the next few minutes, let's just settle our awareness on the breath at the tip of the nostrils or the level of the abdomen. See if we can anchor our mind's eye at either of those places, gently but firmly, just like we anchor a boat at the harbour. We're trying to anchor our awareness at one of those places. We have about 80% of our awareness, 80% of our mind being there, 20% trying to observe and just manage a little bit that practice of being with the breath. That 20% watching when we lose the breath, we lose the object, get caught in thoughts. It's like we go back, we go back to the breath. It takes us back to the breath, that 20% awareness. So let's just do this for a few minutes. So we can see this is not an easy meditation. Sounds simple. Just be with the breath for a few minutes. I mean, how simple can that be? But yet, not easy. Mind gets so clingy onto the thoughts. We go into this rabbit hole in our mind of owning our thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. Then in that space, we make them really concrete, solid, self-existent, right? So there's the problem. There's the issue. It's a sense of ownership that's creating confusion, solidity in our lives. I mean, other people's problems, thoughts, feelings, emotions, not so much a problem for us, but ours, so real, so concrete, kind of, we get drowned, controlled by them. It's interesting, that sense of ownership. Yet when we come to LNB, beautiful place, like a park, Dharma Park. It's almost like what we call in the Dharma Pure Land, reminding us of spiritual matters. It's being absorbed in a spiritual energy. And we don't own this place, so we can enjoy. It creates a space, very gentle space in the mind because there's no sense of ownership. So that feeling a lack of ownership that we feel when we come here, that spaciousness, that lightness, let's do again for the next few minutes, being with the thoughts, whatever emotions, feelings coming up, but just stay in that space of not owning them, not identifying with them, trying to see their what we call their impermanent, fleeting nature, almost like clouds in the sky, or like writing on water. Soon you start to write, it's like it disappears. So can we see that with our thoughts? Any feelings coming up, emotions, just be an observer. Enjoy and then watch and try sit back and watch their fleeting nature. Like a tourist. Let's do this for a few minutes. So one of the first steps in spiritual practice, from the wisdom side of the teachings, the wisdom wing, it's called the first Dharma. First wisdom we're trying to develop is this wisdom of kind of like non-attachment, wisdom of non-clinging. Connecting with the impermanent nature of things, their true nature. Again, on one level, we know things are changing and shifting all the time. But on another level, things appear to our minds very solid and concretely. And we cling to that appearance, whether it's through the sense doors or through the level of our mental consciousness, through thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You know, when we look back in our lives, you know, we've had so many shifts and changes in our lives. Even our persona, who we are, how we identify with ourselves. Just take a moment to look back, you know, from birth, the different phases of life, who you identified with at that time, and how that's shifted and changed until where you are now. Take a few minutes just to go back and just connect with the different personas, emotions, challenges, or happy periods that you went through in your life. It's like we go through, I mean, if we don't believe in incarnation, you know, but yet in this life, we've had, just in this life alone, we've had many incarnations of ourselves. Even from last week, on some level, there's an different incarnation of the self. Feels the same, but a little bit different all the time. When we go to our body, even that from last week, last month, changing slowly, slowly. The cells, the pores, skin, the bones, everything moving and shifting. Slowly aging all the time. Let's take a moment to try and feel that shifting and changing of the body. It's not as solid and as concrete as we kind of project. And again, our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, the more subtle part of ourselves, is like a river, moving, shifting, changing. We're trying to connect with the fluidity of our experience. A place where we don't form thoughts, feelings, emotions, appearances into something that's so concrete. Yet that's what our mind is more familiar with doing, concretizing experience. So because we're not harmonized yet with wisdom, impermanence, there's a need to wake up a deeper wisdom inside us. That again, I said, it's on a kind of sleep mode. We need a powerful medicine, a method to wake that up. A deeper clarity, deeper insight that has the power to overcome, kind of dissolve, melt away our sense of permanence. That causes us to struggle, to suffer, for the mind to go down, to get lost. What is it we're holding on to now? Maybe emotionally, maybe in a relationship, maybe in a work position, maybe a memory, something difficult for your childhood that feels concrete, solid, kind of self-existing, hard to let go. So here is where we use meditation, a little bit more meditation, powerful more meditation, a power in mantra, to heal which feels so tough in the mind, so hard to let go, so hard to see it just as a memory, hard to see it as impermanent, changing, hard to not keep identifying with it. This is what we call purifying. We need to purify that solidity. And the nature of purification is the nature of wisdom. It helps us to release that painful part of ourselves that we just keep clinging to and identifying. We're owning it too strongly. So in the space before us, we rely on the Buddhas, the wisdom of the Buddhas. We imagine, as we see in the slide there, the essence or the appearance of Medicine Buddha. We're at Medicine Buddha land, so I thought we'd use this practice, as we did last week. Like sapphire blue colour, appearing for healing. Medicine Buddha's not just physical healing, but deep healing of the mind, deep healing, starting with this deep sense of permanence, clinging, grasping. Healing what's not moving in our mind right now. Awakening the power of wisdom to overwhelm that difficult place that we have emotionally, memory, psychology, or just generally the delusions in the mind, the habit to cling. So imagine he appears vibrantly, this essence of healing, on a lotus and moon cushion, made of a beautiful sapphire light in the background of the sky, so appearing like a rainbow. So even we can't visualize, we just feel the presence, just like we'd see a rainbow in the sky here, but the rainbow is in the essence of the Medicine Buddha. Their bodies are made of wisdom. So we have that power, to have a wisdom body. It's just we need to break through the habit of clinging. That's the first step, you know. So here the Buddha's, you know, gazing upon me, and we imagine all beings around us all struggling, mostly with this habit of clinging, feeling a concrete, solid sense of self, phenomena, others, you know, kind of in that jungle, a little bit in their mind, you know. So we're all in that same boat. And we all take refuge in the Buddha, who's freed himself for that boat, you know. Freed himself, what we call the waters of existence. So may I achieve that state, that beautiful, awake, very peaceful, restful state, like the moon, luminous, having the capacity to share my luminosity with all sentient beings as the Buddha does, you know, through his teachings, through the presence, through the Sangha, who are also on the path, trying to become more awake. And for the purpose of the class, we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha right now, in the teachings. Even though we're not Buddhists, we're taking refuge in this moment in the teachings of the Buddha, just to try and awaken our mind a little bit more in wisdom, gain a bit more deeper insight to our own psychology mind. So we recite once in Tibetan, twice in English. Sangye chodan sogi chognam na janju bardu dagni kyabsu chi dagi chinso gebe sonange rola penjir sangye drubar shok. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I'm going to recite a little bit of the mantra. So again, mantra for those of us who are new. You know, we need a strong medicine, you know. Just when our body's sick, we have a disease, you know, we take medicine, we take supplements. It's like a supplement for the mind. You know, making our mind more, giving our mind more wisdom. So this particular mantra is for healing the knots that we create in our mind, in our consciousness, the confusion, opening up our capacity for more light, more clarity, a bit more happiness, freedom from those knots, you know, freedom from what we tie ourselves up into in our minds. That's really, in many ways, not reality. So when we visualize for the heart of Medicine Buddha, from the heart of his wisdom, comes forth through our crown, like light and nectar, powerful, like standing under a shower, psychic energy, and filling us up with light and bliss light, the wisdom of the Buddhas, wisdom of impermanence, deeper wisdom, realizing emptiness, our ultimate nature. That flushes away any confusion, any challenges, any knots we have in our mind, our emotional world, our consciousness right now get flushed out. And we feel a deep sense of peace and relaxation as we get showered by that energy. And recite the mantra together. You can either recite together or listen if you're not comfortable reciting, but at least listen and try and feel the purifying light and nectar coming. Tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza sambhogati soha tayada om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha tayada om bekanze maha bekanze Raja samogadi soha tayata om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze Raja samogadi soha tayata om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze Raja samogadi soha Tayata om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha tayata om bekanze bekanze maha bekanze raza samogati soha. Okay, so when you're ready, you can come out the meditation. Welcome. Did you come for the first week? Or maybe I've seen you at meditations. Meditations on the Sundays, yeah. What's your name again? DJ. Okay, great. I think I'll remember that. Rahon? Rohan, yeah, sorry, Rohan. What's your name? Lisha? Nisha and Scott. Are you just popping in past? Yeah. Okay, anyway, welcome. So we're in the middle of a 3 week class, but hopefully, you're welcome to stay. Hopefully you get something out of it. So we're this week, last week, I tried to cover a little bit what we talked about last week, impermanence. We're going to go into that a little bit more into this class. So the class is mostly about developing our wisdom nature. For those of you who maybe just joined, how we open that up a little bit more, how we connect with the reality and permanence. As I said in the meditation, we kind of know on one level that things are permanent changing, but yet still there's a sense of clinging and grasping in things like concrete. Yeah, you see that in your meditation, thoughts, feelings, emotions. We really own them and make a lot more out of them than it's actually really there. And that's where we struggle. That's where the inner struggle is. That's where we're creating what we call. So I mentioned last week, when you go into Buddhist temples, how many us, DJ, you seen this before at the center, the Wheel of Life? Yeah. So this is the depiction of that the Buddha asked to be drawn at his time, because not many people at the time of Buddha could maybe read, and also visual. When we see things visually, it really helps. So I'm not going to go. This would be a whole other class, 4 sets of class going through the whole wheel, but I wanted to just show you that because some of us might not be aware of it. Some of us, like in the online, are aware of it. Most of us, maybe apart from Caitlin. I'm not sure of Caitlin's background, but it's something as Buddhist practitioners we have to kind of go over again and again. We look at again and again, remind ourselves because it's showing what's going on for us right now. What's happening in our reality right now. It's like kind of trying to come to a level of acceptance with that. It's a bit like, I always use this analogy, like it's exactly the same, when alcoholics come to an acceptance of their situation, that it's not, you're not happy with that, it's not creating happiness, then you go and find a solution, but you have to come to that. We all know that people maybe have addiction problems or cells, if we've had that, you have to come to that, even though people tell you that you have to come to that yourself, but then when you come to that, then you can go somewhere and they give you a lot of help, like how to come out of that. So it's a kind of like that with the Dharma path. That's why as Buddhists, we don't go out and advertise the Dharma because a lot of people, they're not ready to hear, So why we come here? Because we have some spiritual interests. We bump against some of your limitations. And actually, for those of us who come to the Dharma a little bit with more struggle, more suffering, it's actually really good because you connect more, you're connecting more deeply with your suffering and figuring out, I need to find a solution, like an alcoholic, You need to connect with that first. So we come here and we connect a little bit, some of us. Oh, I maybe need to, when I first met the Dharma, I need to meditate. That's where it was the main thing. Most of us for Westerners, we just feel we need to meditate because our mind's a bit stuck or we can't find space. We don't quite. But then when it comes to the deeper psychology of the mind, many of us are like, nah, I just want to feel a bit happier. That's all, you know? It's true, yeah. So my first class, I was a bit like suffering, and I was like, I don't know, you know, my first 10-day course. But, you know, I was suffering, I realized. I was struggling internally. I was a bit stuck. I was very stuck in my life, you know. So, you know, yeah, some of us wanted just a little bit of break for the stuckness, a little bit break for our emotional world. So we do a little bit meditation light, you know. But this class is not super light because we're going into a little bit more of like why things happen to me. Why is all this happening to me? Not just a little bit of why, but like deeper into why it's happening to me. What's really going on in my mind? And that's what that wheel of life is. The cycle. Why are we getting recycled? You know, even in this small lifetime, in this small incarnation, we've recycled ourselves into different me, myself, and I's. Yeah, that's what I was trying to kind of show in the meditation. There's so many variations of who we think we are, who we identify with, who is me, who is self. In a daytime, we go through that. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm low. I'm lazy. I mean, we go through small incarnate. Why is that? Because there's so many. We're having these variations of selves all the time. But still, in that moment, it feels very real who the self is. And that's the confusion. Because, yes, actually, we're right. There's so many different parts of ourselves all the time happening, so many aspects and ways we identify with ourselves. But yet, how come each one feels so real if it's changing all the time? That can't be quite right. Is that, you know? So that's why in the that we have to really be kind of open to you know, challenging ourselves, you know, challenging our reality. Is this really real? What's coming out in my mind? What's popping up in my thoughts? How real is it? You know, how am I confusing myself more by strongly clinging to that feeling, emotion, sense of self? This is what we're challenging in Buddhist practice. So we have to go a little bit deeper, you know, because yes, meditate, feel a bit nice, calm the emotions a bit. That we can do that, but it's not good. It'll last for a while and then, you know, because we need a kind of longer term solution, you know. And so to have that, it's like healing ourselves a long term problem. Usually you have to take many medicines, you know, it's not just one medicine if you've got stuff going on in the body, you know. So even for like cancer and stuff like that, you usually need chemo, you need this, you need radiation, you need, and we'd say that's a serious illness. This for the from a Buddhist perspective, psychologically, this is an illness we've had for lifetimes, not just now, you know. That's why it's quite deep. That's why our sense of permanence feels quite solid. Even though we know things are changing and shifting, I am changing, but still in the moment feels so real. Me, myself, and I. My emotion, my feeling, my problem. It's, yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's really so there's a confusion, there's a basic confusion going on in the mind. So that's what we're trying to unpack through the teachings. And then you try to unpack it through your own reflection and your own meditation. Eventually, it all needs to be unpacked at the level of meditation. But if we don't know how to unpack, we might just go off the in a completely wrong way in our meditations. We can pick up things here and there. That helps. But to really unpack it, we need, you know, we need a sort of, you know, some clarity, you know, on the different that's why what we'll call a gradual path to enlightenment, a gradual path to, we might be thinking, well, I'm not bothered about enlightenment, you know, but I'm not here to get enlightened, you know, but we still want to be happy. So it's a gradual path to happiness, if you want to call it that, you know. Gradual path to understanding yourself more, dealing with your stuff more, you know, step by step. So the wheel of life is showing us a little bit where we are right now, you know. So what was the big guy on the outside? Who's he again? Mara, yeah. And who's Mara? He's actually, I mean, yeah, it's based on that. But Mara's actually what we call the Lord of Death. That's what he showed. So we're in the fangs. How many people can say, I know when I'm going to die. I think I'll be okay when I die. I know what's happening next life. I've already, how many of us here? Many of us think maybe I'm just snuffed out at the death time. I don't know. What do we think about death? So some of us already have had teachings on this. But so here, Rinpoche used to say about Lama Yeshe, who's one of our founders. Some of you are familiar with Lama. And this is what we call holy beings, saints like Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We say that those beings are on top of death. They're like the Buddha in the corner there. See that Buddha? He's not in that wheel. He's outside, right in the left, right corner. That's showing like our, Buddha mind. When we achieve Buddha mind, we're out of that wheel. Now, it's not just the Buddha that can get out of that wheel. We can all get there, but right now we're in the wheel, which means don't know when I'm going to die. Don't really have much control over that. Don't know what I'm going to do when I die. Don't know where I'm going to go when I die. Can't really, like that. Is that where we are? Yeah. We're not beating ourselves up here or anything, by the way. It's just like, okay, this is where we are. That's true. That's a truth. We can't say it's not true. It's true for all of us. I mean, I don't know, some of you might be saints already, as I say, but generally speaking, for those normal folks, ordinary beings, we call ourselves ordinary beings, we're in that uncontrolled cycle. We're recycling ourselves, our consciousness. So Mara there is saying, I've got you. It's a bit like that. So he's a bit terrifying because, yeah, death for most of us, if we're honest, is a bit scary, right? Because we're not there. We don't have like an ability, say, to have control of it. We're in uncontrolled rebirth. So what they say about saints and lamas, they're on top of death. They've got it sorted. We're inside that cycle. So we're not on top of that. We are not on top of that mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We're not of the wisdom right now to say, I'm okay with that. We might think that because generally if we live a very good life, and I'll talk about this a bit more, like the 3 levels, I'll go into that later. We might think that, but we'll go into that when we go into the 3 levels of practitioner and how we 3 level of practitioner and non-practitioner, how we kind of, where we are in that process of what we're thinking about death. I'll go into that later in the class. But basically, just to go in a nutshell, so last week, this first one here, you can see this was showing ignorance. Where does this wheel start? Where does the wheel in our mind? So again, it's not something out there we're creating. This is what we're creating with our mind. I mean, we know some of us, because we're already practitioners, we create anger with our mind. I mean, who else creates anger? It looks like that person out there's made me angry, but it's just, we know it's the way we're reacting to the situation that creates the anger, because one person over there might not get angry in that situation and I do. So it's not the situation out there, it's us. It's how we're relating to that appearance, whatever it is. We're creating the anger. We this is where we have to take, in the Buddhist path, a lot of responsibility for our minds. I mean, full responsibility. Eventually, getting out of the blame game, as I always say. It's hard because there's a very strong push to sort of blame. Not all, some of us are quite patient, but then at some point, somebody or something gets our patience. It's true. So we have a level. Why is our patience still limited? Because we haven't opened up this wisdom impermanence. We haven't opened up the wisdom that sees things very clear. We're still stuck in concreteness. So we believe that person's doing that to me. This this situation is doing that to me. This sense in me. So it's always going back to, if we didn't have this strong sense in me, which is the root of confusion, it's an ignorance, this first picture, a not knowing of how we exist, a disconnected with our fluid nature. First of all, we try and get impermanence, and then we try and go to even something deeper beyond that. First of all, we need to see we're much more fluid than we think when we feel we are, when we how we identify as we are, you know? So this is so, but first of all, you know, so what's blocking that is what we call this mind, this blood. It's like our wisdom nature, which the Buddha's fully opened. Trying like to go back and forward because we're not all bad, we're not all impatient, we're not all poor me, we're not all the victim. It's just that's how that's what we're more identifying with than our wisdom nature. Our wisdom nature's there all the time. It's, as I said, it's a kind of on a sleepy mode. You know, it's not functioning fully because we're so much caught in how we think we are, who we feel we are. I'm really this, they're really that. So it's squeezing our wisdom nature, it's blocking our wisdom nature. So that one needs to be released, you know, give ourselves a break. It's not easy, but it's possible. That's why I just try and start with mantra visualization because that has a power. You're nodding. That has a power to kind of, on a very subconscious level, power of mantra, the syllables to sort of waken up, soften up what's tough, what's hard, you know? That even through thinking and we're not getting there, you know, through the conceptual mind. We need our conceptual mind. We want it to start thinking in the right direction. But ultimately, we're going to have to rely on a level of non-conceptuality, non-thinking, a part of us that to communicate with our part of ourselves that's deeply knowing, deeply aware. That part that's kind of we're not, you know, it's blocked, it's choked up. So we want to wake that up because mostly we're on this ignorance level, the blind man playing the blind man's game. You know, that's what that image there is. That's where this wheel starts because the consciousness is blinded by a sense of concreteness, a sense of separation from my reality, us, ourselves, and others, a sense of duality. Blinded by that experience, that feeling of and being innately separate, different from others, which is not true. That's not the truth, you know. So here, the one below, so from that sense of blindedness, so we have a purity and our consciousness as a purity. So last week we talked about how, you know, our aggregates, our body, you know, we sort of identify, you know, everything is a sort of a little bit pure in the nature of happiness. But when we dig a little bit deeper, body's not pure, you know, it's aging, it's getting old. We need to shower all the time. Need to, you know, so our body's kind of reflecting what's going on in the consciousness. You know, what we're creating. We're creating a contaminated reality, an un, an unpure, unclean reality. I mean, everything around us getting time to we have to shower all the time, vacuum all the time, dust all the time. Everything's always getting dirty, you know? It's a lot to keep on top of, you know? You just shower and 5 minutes later, oh God, I just got dirty again, you know? Or, you know, I went outside, I got really hot, I'm all sweaty, you know? So it's like that. That's the body's reflecting what's going on in the mind. So because we have a purity, we have an innate awareness that's clean, pure. You know, the Buddhas never need to bathe. They're living in a pure environment all the time, you know. So we're not. We're creating something kind of contaminated and pure right now, you know. And this is what this second one is. This is a potter, and it's showing the sort of condition of existence that we're in right now, or karma. Let me see, get my notes up, see if there's something else I'm missing here. So you know, we're sort of creating this, you know how like a potter, he just puts his foot on the pedal, I think, and you just kind of, I've only done pottery one time. Who's done pottery? But I did it one time and you put your foot, and it's almost like habitually the pot that just goes, you know, you just start the thing and you're just making this, you know, what do you call it? A pot or a cup or something like that, you know, out of clay. So it's almost like subconsciously, because our mind is causative, we were talking about this just before class, how we're creating our reality. So the nature of our mind at all levels is causative. What does that mean? We are creating a reality with our mind all the time. And we can see that just momentarily. When we like someone, they appear nice. But as soon as they upset us, they appear not so nice, right? So who's creating that? It's not like, oh, that person's changed out there to a bit difficult person from their side. It's from our side they've changed into a difficult person, not from their side. I mean, of course, they've got their stuff going on, but we create a view of that person with our mind and a beauty or an ugliness or a challengeness with our mind. So it sounds easy. Some of us even have been practicing for some time, but if we have to really think about that, how we're creating momentarily with our body, speech, and mind. It's called action or intention karma. We've heard these things before, but it's actually so very subtly, like the potter. We've already created some. What we say is we've created a kind of reality for ourselves now because we're here as humans. We've got a relatively good life. We're living in a country where there's peace. We've got beautiful weather. So it maybe sounds like, well, I just got this life. But from the Buddhist perspective, we created those seeds and imprints in past lives. And there's conditions now. But again, it's answering the question of, well, how come somebody's born in a country, other people are born where there's war and a famine and all that. It's not because they're bad people. It's just what we've created with our minds. We are the creators, not God, not Buddha, not anyone else. This is what just on this very simple level, again, not going to go deeply into karma, but just because we need to understand, we need to create our own happiness. We've actually created a lot of happiness with our mind right now, a certain level, because we're here, we still have our stuff, still have our karmic baggage, our mental baggage, but we've created quite a lot of goodness already, you know? So what we want to do is keep creating happiness so we can be the potter who's creating more and more happiness and eventually getting out there and being like the Buddha, a complete freedom from any kind of suffering, challenge, problem in the mind, a complete and total peace with the mind. So this second wheel is just kind of showing that, right now, because we're blinded by ignorance, from the place of ignorance, from the place of a strong self and me, myself, and I, separate identity, separation, duality. From there, we're creating a contaminated sense of self, a wrong view of self, and that's creating the wheel, and all those other aspects on the rim are showing the kind of how we're doing that in a sort of dependent way, in a kind of causal way. That those outer rim showing that the inner rim, just in a nutshell, is showing the middle one that's bigger, showing all the realms you can be born into, how you create that, the animal realm, the human realm. There's a hell realm, a spirit realm. It's us creating that though. Nobody else is putting ourselves there. And the middle one in the very middle is showing what's causing the wheel to turn. What's that called? The rim? No, it's not called the rim. What's the middle part called in the wheel? The what, sorry? Axle? No, axle, yeah. So where's that all coming from? These three, they use animals to symbolize. So the bottom one there, it's hard to see. I should have made that one bigger, but that one's pig showing ignorance. The hub, yeah. I thought it was hub, yeah. Axles are the things on the outside a little bit more. No? Hub? Hub axle, okay. The hub of the matter is maybe that more is the pig showing ignorance, which again is a blind man. And then the other two, the rooster, no, it's like a chicken or pigeon. Pigeons supposedly have a lot of desire, attachment. So it's a pigeon, the top one. And then, so they're both coming out ignorance. And then this other one is a snake of aversion or hatred. So those are the three that are creating in our mind this samsaric world, this wheel, this going from life to life and not quite connected with reality, disconnected, you know. These are the hub of the matter, and this is what we need to work with in our mind, you know. And the last one here at the bottom, what does it all end in? No, not the one at the top, it's one at the right side here. Here. You don't see, yeah, that one there. Anyone know what this one is? It's not super clear in this image, but anyone online remember? Maybe Teresa. What's the very last one in the Wheel of Life? The last dependent arising. What does this all end up as?
I'm trying to figure it out, but I can't. Sorry.
The last one is old age and death. So this is actually a corpse that he's carrying to the cemetery or something, you know. So it's true. What does our end? Our life ends on die in old age and death. You know what I mean? So that's what we're kind of cycling in. The result of kind of being bound by ignorance, a sense of separation and duality, carrying that in our mind stream, in our experience of life, and playing out through and also gets what gets played out through that is attachment, anger, impatience. You know, that all comes. I mean, we can't really disagree with that. That all springs out of that. You know, and then because of that, we end up in in death, and we kind of get recycled again in that process. You know. So the Buddha is showing that he's out of that. You know, what he did is he got himself out of that process, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, on a deep level, you know. And he's pointing at the moon because, of course, the moon is a very peaceful image to us, you know. It's a sense of freedom, liberation, luminosity. So he's saying, you know, like me, you know, follow the, you follow my path and you can get out of that, you know. So we may not feel like we can all get liberation and enlightenment in this life, but I think the main thing is to recognize that we need to work and chip away at these states of mind. You know, once we see that that's what's causing us mental pain, you know, and what ones are maybe more powerful for me, and what do I need to just start moving along with and chipping away at. So we talked about the four, last week, the four wrong concepts. So what wisdoms are we trying to develop, you know? So what wisdoms are we trying to wake up so we can slowly see these in our mind and slowly diminish their power and increase the power of these wisdoms? First one, or they're called the four seals, or the four how things really are, you know? All conditioned things are impermanent. Anything that's under the power of causes and conditions, as we are right now, has an impermanent nature, like our life, like our body, like everything. I mean, nothing stays the same, you know, in this world, you know. And so coming to grips with that, trying to accept that, trying to see that, trying to be in harmony with that, so we don't, why? Because it'll break down the clinging in the mind. So it's a bit small, yeah? All contaminated phenomena are unsatisfactory. The chocolate cake. Not saying don't enjoy your chocolate cake, but get a realistic view that that's not the cause of happiness, you know? All phenomena are empty and selfless. So that's a deeper way where we're going to connect more. We're going to talk about that more next week. Nirvana is peace. So the two, we want to get all those, we want to see for the holy beings, enlightened beings, this they have this wisdom, you know. So there's no clinging, there's no attachment, mind's in deep peace all the time. They've awakened their wisdom nature. So their mind's sealed, so it's like stamped or sealed with those four wisdoms. So the mind never goes up and down. No, it's always peace, it's always in peace. It's always in bliss, it's always in happiness. It's always deeply connected to others. There's no sense of separation. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to always express that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for those of you who don't know, is the Lama here. He's my main teacher. But I don't know if you can see he's behind the screen a little bit for you sitting there. Yeah, oh, he's also up here. These are our three main lamas back here, you know. And so if you ever have a chance to be around holy beings, it's unbelievable. But we should, as I always say, we shouldn't think it's just their job to do that and I'm just here with my stuff, you know. But our job is to get there, you know, and we can get there. So anyway, you know, when around, you know, it didn't matter how heavy the problem appeared out there, there was no upsetness in the mind, you know. No sense of discouragement, so no sense of clinging, upsetness. I mean, for example, when there was an earthquake in Nepal, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was in the monastery in Nepal. In 2015, there was a major earthquake, you know, like point 8 point something or something like that, 9 point, really heavy earthquake. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche was in Nepal at the time, and he was in the top of a 3-story building, which is even more scary, you know. And the earthquake started, and Rinpoche was just in meditation. All the monks were running around reciting mantras like, we need to get out, we need to get out. Rimshi was just sitting there in meditation. He wouldn't move. And they're like, Rimshi, we need to go, we need to, because you know, the building. Rimshi's like, this is the chance to meditate on compassion. So he wasn't, it was, you know, not moving, no fear. I mean, some of us might feel like that. We have no fear. You know, it's possible, you know, but it's not just no fear. It's like a deep connectedness with what's going on, you know, in the nature of things, and no fear at all around the body or the sense of self or losing an eye. I mean, that's when you really see the difference between sort of our minds and somebody else's mind, you know. So it's possible for us all to get there, you know, and we get there especially through these two last ones. Of all phenomena are empty and selfless, which many of us have heard now. There's so much available online. We've heard these things. And nirvana is peace, you know. So these two we're going to talk about a little bit more next week, as I say. But this week, and just sharing again, what does nirvana mean from Lama Yeshe? Someone who has transcended their own conception, agitated mind. What conception we're talking about? Wisdom, the conception of an I, conception of permanence, conception of me, myself, and I, a conception of a sense of ownership around our body and mind. Because it's interesting, when others have problems, we don't get stressed. But sometimes we do. Depends if it's people really close or around us. But then again, it's usually coming from, you know, others have problems, we've got more space and do. But when we have problems, whoa, it's just overwhelming, you know, because there's a sense of ownership around that. So that sense of ownership is what we need to, wrong sense of ownership is what we need to work with. That creates agitation. So, yes, so it's a beautiful way Lama Yeshe expresses that. When you transcend the wrong conception, agitated mind, and attain fully integrated, everlasting, satisfied wisdom. So when, as again, one of the wrong conceptions is, you know, I showed the picture of Mick Jagger last week. I can't get no satisfaction, yeah. Well, it's a truth, you know. I mean, some of these singers sing the truth, you know. I don't know if they've got the answers, but they sing about the problems of life, you know, a lot, you know. I mean, we can all relate because we go through all that stuff, but then we need to look for a solution, you know. So the solution here, Lama's saying, is our wisdom. That's what brings everlasting satisfaction. So there's no emotional problem, upset, disconnectedness. That's what will bring about a deep, deep satisfaction in the mind. Nirvana. And again, for those of us who weren't here last week, this is what we talked about. Can you see that okay? Yeah. Some of us can, some of us can't. The hand's a bit like seeking, grasping the impermanent as permanent. That's what we're doing in the meditation. So what we want to see is all conditioned things as it stands in our world, like right now, everything's impermanent. So getting an acceptance of that, getting a harmonizing our mind with that. Seeing, grasping that which is nature is suffering, dissatisfaction is happiness. So just kind of trying to find satisfaction through the sense objects or through relationships that are kind of empowered with attachment and, you know, like that. I'm not saying relationships are bad just because I'm a monastic, not at all. But how we approach relationships have to be so, I mean, many of you have been in relationships, we know it's a big teaching, yeah. Most people, I think the more you're in relationships, I'm imagining, the more you recognize that's your practice. as opposed to some sort of blissed out, happy, we practice with each other, it becomes your practice. Because after 2, 3 years, we know enough about each other and we know that nobody's perfect, right? Everybody's got their stuff. You know what that person's stuff is after some time. So are we going to work with that stuff? Or are we just going to like, this is too much. See you later. That's the reality. That's what happens now so much. In the old days, you had no chance, no choice, because people you didn't really get divorced or separated. But these days, it's kind of easier to walk away. Sometimes that's beneficial, sometimes it's not. I don't know, because then another level, that person can be your practice. You practice the patience, practice the understanding of the impermanence, practice the compassion, practice the kindness. You see, you're nodding. It's true, though. Yeah, we become each other's practice. So even in the nunnery, in the monastery, it's like we're each other's practice. That's the reality. I learned that quite quickly. I thought, oh, it's all the nuns, all the monks. We're all going to be so harmonious. Well, not really. We're just in training here. So we are actually each other's practice. Everybody thinks when they go to the nunnery or the monastery or the Dharma centre, it's going to be so peaceful there. Well, not really. We're in training here. We're not Buddhas. I mean, holy beings, different matter. But for us, we have to start to see if we're really practitioner, then everything becomes our practice, really. Seeing, grasping the impure as pure. So that's what I'm talking about. We kind of feel like, I was watching a teaching of the Lama Zopa Rinpoche yesterday. We feel like our body's pure, although we need to wash, clean, bathe, all that stuff. But there's a feeling like our body's pure in a way, permanent. But as the Rinpoche says, you just need to go a little bit below the skin, and it's scary. We're not emanating divine smells here, even with the best perfume and scent, it goes away. And so is there a contamination? It's showing a contamination of the mind. It's not to like beat ourselves up and say, I'm ugly or I'm this or that. It's just getting clear that actually what our body is a carcass in the making. You digesting that? It's true. No? As you get older, it feels like that, yeah. And again, it's not to hate ourselves for it, but it's to see that's kind of what's going on. I mean, that is what's going on, you know. Doesn't mean we don't enjoy others and things like that, but in reality, I mean, that's why, for practitioners, they have skeletons and bones and all that. It's to remind ourselves of impermanence. This is where you are now. Of course, we can have these divine bodies of the Buddha. Absolutely, we have that in nature. We can experience divine peace and happiness, but it's just like, okay, here we are now, and this is where we want to go. Seeing that which is selfless is having a self. So we want to move towards, all phenomena are empty and selfless, not concrete and solid, self existent, truly existent. They're not like that. And nirvana, when we get to that place, I mean, I don't know. I've not achieved nirvana, but I have a lovely book with His Holiness. I mentioned it. I think Teresa, you remember during the teachings that took to Norbaling on the biography of His Holiness, and it's so nice to read because not all the lamas kind of share their experiences, but there's some times when some lamas do. Some because then you're supposed to talk about your realizations. There's no danger of that for me, but oh well, yeah. Generally, you're not supposed to talk about your realizations. I mean, of course, it's good to share some of your experiences because it's an experience. It's maybe not a realization yet. And share as in share to inspire others or to help others. But His Holiness has over the years shared some of his, I would say, more like realizations and experiences. And, there's a couple of places where he talks about like when the mind, he finally releases the mind from this sense of self in his meditation, the peace, the bliss, the happiness. He was just kind of just expressing that a little bit, and it's like, wow, so joyful. I think there's just, and I mean, we get moments of joy and happiness. Things in our life make her happy, joyful, for sure. But we're talking about an uncontaminated joy here that just doesn't stop. An uncontaminated happiness, a pure happiness that just doesn't stop. Our consciousness is mixed with a deep peace and happiness that it's hard because if we had tasted it, then we'd be like, wow, I want some more of that. It's like having a really good ice cream and like you go back to that store, you know. But it's hard for us to get a real taste, you know, but we do sometimes in our meditation. But if we haven't tasted it, it's kind of really hard to know what you're looking at. So I think that's why some it's very helpful for us Westerners, I think, for people who have experiences and insights to share them to inspire us, you know. Dave. Sometimes it's I mean, I think it's a lot dependent on your motivation, you know, and of course at that level they don't, but it can, you have to be careful because it can kind of reduce your real, you can sometimes, I mean, it's for humility mostly. And sometimes, you know, it can, depending on you, if your motivation's not pure, it can reduce your over it can reduce it over time, disempower the realization, you know. But you know, at the level he's holiness, I mean, he's that's not going to happen. I mean, his motivation is really just to, I think, especially so, in the Tibetan culture was a bit different. You know, every culture is different. So I think for us Westerners, because we feel so low about ourselves, we feel like we can't do it, it's not possible. For us, I think we need the lamas to say, you know, it is possible, you know. I've had this experience and you have the same nature in mind. It's no different. We have the same nature in mind as the Buddha. He's just put the effort and we haven't. Yes, Patrick?
Realization being the same. You know, like you might limit someone's ability to have their realization if you put yours in a box and say it should look like this. You know what I mean? Like ultimately, a realization might.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Patrick's just going to say what he's sharing about realization.
Think
Hmm.
that one of the reasons to not share the realization possibly would be then to not give somebody a false idea of what their realization is going to be like, look like, so that it can be more pure when they have that and approach it from their own merits and not
Yeah, yeah.
try and
Hmm.
mimic what someone else's realization was.
Sure, yeah, yeah. And also it creates an expectation in the mind. I think, you know, when you're talking about non-conceptual state, everything right now is conceptual for us. So even when we hear that, it's like, oh, yeah, that sounds, you know, I wonder what that's like. So it might create expectation in the mind, or that's the thing, even with like, we talk about the wisdom emptiness, wisdom and selflessness, they're all non-conceptual. So even words are limited. It limits that experience. But yeah, so I think it just depends on the audience. With very skillful teachers, they'll know, you know, who to share experiences with, you know, because that's going to benefit their mind, you know. So I think that's the key thing, you know. But I think for Westerners, because there was a period when His Holiness was saying he didn't have any realizations. And I mean, he's this Lama that brings thousands and thousands of people. So I think one Westerner was like, well, His Holiness, if you don't have that, where are we? Where are we in this story? You know, how are we ever? So I think he, you know, at certain times he started to share some experiences, which is helpful because then you feel like, okay, well, at least His Holiness there, I can get somewhere, you know. Teresa's nodding. Because otherwise it's like, well, if you're such a great saint like that, says he hasn't realized nirvana or wisdom, realized, I mean, how are we ever going to get there, you know? So we need to feel like, well, yeah, we're somewhere here, you know. So this is just again, just wanted to go in a little bit more. We've only got about another 10, 15 minutes, but just talking a little bit more about impermanence. So sometimes these quotes, this is the seventh Dalai Lama. So of course, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the 14th Dalai Lama. I always say there's a wonderful book by Glenn Mullen on the 14 Dalai Lamas. It's not too, it's quite thick. It's about this thick, if anybody, but it's very nice just going through the different, you know, a little bit on each of the Dalai Lamas, you know, like what they did, what they accomplished, their main teachings, and a little bit on their biography. Very inspiring. And this is the seventh one, who was a great poet and composer. So he says, if you look closely at and contemplate deeply people and things that appear around you, you can see that everything's in a constant flux. Everything becomes a teacher of impermanence. Well, it does in a way. But you know, for a while, impermanence is just a pain in the neck sometimes, you know, isn't it? Because our minds are not trained in wisdom, you know. So that's why we need to think about impermanence. We need to meditate on our wisdom nature because for us, we're not quite in the place maybe where everything's a beautiful teacher in impermanence. You know? It's like Can't believe that, Shiv, can't believe that, you know. So we're not quite there, but that's where you want to be. So you're talking about a little bit in being able to embrace impermanence instead of feeling like it's a pain in the neck, you know. You're strangled by impermanence. You can't handle impermanence. You can't handle change. You go emotionally down when things change, you know. So we need quite a broad perspective, you know. We need to think about it in quite a broad way, impermanence. So we can see there is a need for that, because if we don't think about impermanence, we get strangled by change emotionally. Yeah, we get stuck by change emotionally. But this is the nature of things. We see it in our lives all the time. So we want to move our mind slowly. Again, it comes through meditation, listening to teachings more, reflecting more, developing this wisdom energy within us that's harmonious with with impermanence. It's like this is the bridge to realize a deeper reality of selflessness. We can't just jump to emptiness and deathlessness and selflessness, and we're not able, our minds are not able. You know why? Because we have attachment. What's blocking our kind of fluidity in our mind, being able to allow thoughts, feelings, emotions to kind of more arise, recognizing their kind of more fluid nature as we get, oh, I'm angry. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, she's like this. Oh, he's like that. And we go, whoop. Instead of going, wait a minute, just step back a little bit. Are they really like that? Is that all there is about them? They're just an angry person and that's it. I've just stuck that person in a little corner over there as that angry person and I'm not talking to them again. I'm just going to create a big wall between them and me, you know, and is that's what's all about that person? We're just seeing a very small reality of that person because we're just identifying with a very small reality of ourselves. We do have anger, but we have a lot of other stuff too, you know. Or, you know, loss, you know, when we lose something, a job, a person in our life, a relationship, I'm lonely. I'm like, you know, nobody likes me. You know, I'm this, I'm like that, poor me. Poor. So we hang on. Yeah, those thoughts, feelings, and emotions come up, but we don't allow them just to get purified. We don't let, it's hard for us to let go of that sense of who we think we are in that moment. Yeah, it's not easy. We get stuck in that view of self and it pulls the mind down. We get drowned in that feeling, thought, emotion, rather than being able to step back and see it's just a part of us right now. It's not the whole reality of us right now. Again, this sounds easy, but we know it's not easy, yeah? So again, this is why we have to rely on meditation, teachings, reflection, to start to waken up our wisdom nature, a wisdom that is able to be more powerful than the attachment energy, than the anger energy. A wisdom that start to be able to break that down. Because really, what slide am I on? Yeah. It's another way. Sorry, we'll just two or three more slides. I want to get through these this week. Because again, another way how we run towards suffering like moths flying into a flame. We get that one a little bit. We run toward difficult things, even in our mind, never mind out there in the senses. But you know, a difficult aspects ourselves comes up, and we go like this is what I'm like. I'm like this. I'm like that. I'm like that. I'm poor me, guilty me. And then we go. It's like we get burned in that experience. We burn ourselves out. Sometimes we burn ourselves out with anxiety, stress, and all that. But we sort of burn and hold on to that who I am, you know, and that this creates a lot of stress, anxiety, and we kind of burn our mind, you know. So again, we're showing how we do things right now, but not to kind of stay in that place, but to then say, yeah, that is suffering, that is difficulty. I want to get out of that. I want to find a method to get space from that. So the more we see what our mind's doing with these analogies and how that kind of tightens, knots ourselves into a very fixed sense of self, the more we kind of, what renunciation is like, oh yeah, that's not nice, that's not comfortable. The more we want to go, okay, I want to find a solution. I want to look, but in the solution here, we just think about impermanent nature a little bit more, like this. Oh no, this one is another analogy, and then we'll get to that other quote. Children at play build sandcastles with great seriousness. When the tide comes and the castles wash away, they weep. So it is with all things we cling to in this life. I quite like that analogy. Just wanted to share it with you. Building sandcastles. So it doesn't mean that we don't enjoy things in life. Like the kids can enjoy making the sandcastles, but if you think it's going to be there forever, and you know, as we often do, oh, this I'm going to be in this relationship forever. I love you, and we're like this, and I mean, at some point it's going to change, you know. So we still, it's kind of like holding things in a lighter way, recognizing this is beautiful right now, but you know, things are going to change, you know, like the sandcastle. We know it's going to get swept away. We know that, but kids, they might get upset when they say, "That's my sandcastle." No, that's yours. That's his. Like, you know, they fight over it when it's not owned by anyone, really. So it's a bit like that in our lives, you know, because eventually everything does get swept away with impermanence. So is there something we need to think, what is it in our life that we are holding on to too deeply, you know? How can I change that? How can the wisdom of impermanence, reflecting on impermanence more, shift that thing that feels so concrete? We've all got something concrete and hard in our mind, yeah? Some emotional thing, some memory, some work situation, some challenge. How can we look at it in a different way, step back, see it a little bit more impermanent like this? This is what we're trying to do. This is from L'Amazon Kappa, you know. So water, seeing things more like this kind of water bubble effect, you know, like bubbles of water, they just come and go, or like when you blow a bubble, you know, what this bubbles game, and it just kind of comes in. Our life's much more like that. Doesn't mean that we're not present and functioning with what's going on, but we're a little bit back, you know, not clinging and attached, kind of like we are at LMB, enjoying, looking at the view of our mind, because it's all coming from our mind, you know, from this perspective, looking at the view of our mind, but not clinging into everything being so solid and concrete. Also in our emotional world, also in our world of thoughts, our feelings. We want to create a wisdom space that's connected more with the impermanence. First Dharma, first step back in the mind. Milarepa, great Tibetan yogi. He's the most famous saint in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. You know about Milarepa, Patrick? Anyone else know about Milarepa? Yeah, okay, great, yeah. Yeah, I know. Anyway, he was a great saint around the 11th century who yeah, he was so famous because, you know, it's a very good example for Westerners um, because he killed 30 people early on in life. Can you imagine? We killed 30 people this life. Most of us are quite sensitive spiritually. So he sort of came under the influence of his mother, who had a lot of resentment because her husband passed away, and the relatives took all the money, so they had a very poor life. You know, he was brought up; they were wealthy, but the father passed, and then at that day and age, you know, the mother couldn't take the wealth, so the brother-in-law took it, and they took all the money. You know, so Milarepa was brought up with great poverty, you know, abject poverty, the mother as well. So coming from wealth to poverty is really difficult. So the mother developed a lot of resentment towards the family and asked Milarepa to go and study black magic, so he could kill the aunt and the uncle. And the villagers also were really nasty, you know. They didn't have any compassion for them, you know. So anyway, Milarepa did that, and then after he generated a huge amount of regret, you know, for doing that, for he managed to develop the skill of black magic, and he caused a storm to rain on the village, and like about 30 people died, including some animals and things like that. And then later he was like, "What have I done?" You know, because he was devoted to his mother, so he did what his mother said. But later he was like, he felt the weight, you know, karmic weight. So he sought out this incredible guru, Marpa, and went through many trials with Marpa, who purified his karma. And then I mean, it's an incredibly inspiring story, you know, how much effort he put in. Because we think about, so what's inspiring about Milarepa is he he managed to, you know, none of us have killed 30 people this life. So we don't have that kind of karma to purify. You know, we have our stuff, but we're not looking at that amount of karmic baggage, probably, you know. But he did, and even on top of all that, he was able to purify all that and achieve enlightenment, you know, which is really incredible. That's why he's so revered, you know, because he had so much to clean karmically. And he was able to do all that and through great hardship. And as he says here, at first I was afraid of death, so I fled to the mountains. Now I've realised the nature of mine, so even if death comes, I have no fear. So what this is showing, you know, that first of all, this is the next part I wanted to go into, but we'll have to wait till next week now. A little bit more on the most powerful way to approach the teachings on impermanence, to awaken up our power of impermanence, to awaken up our subtle, our kind of sleeping consciousness, is to think about death. You know, we can think, oh, this is nice, LMB, it's nice, everyone's, you know, my body's changing and decaying, the everything around me is my thoughts, feelings, emotion. But when we think about our own death, well, and I'm going to die. That's quite powerful. That's an immediate challenge to the ego, you know, this sense of self. So we have to kind of approach it. It's kind of be quite uncomfortable in the beginning to think about your own death. You know, we kind of don't want to think about it as Westerners. So because of the habit of not thinking about it, we have to approach it kind of gently but firmly, because it is definite, as these three things says, you know, and maybe think about this a little bit more for next week. How are we, how are we, where are we at where feeling, understanding, our acceptance of death? Where are we? If we check in our mind, you know, how much are we ready for that? How much do we really know about that? How much control have we got over that? How much are we thinking about that in our daily life? Because actually, it's the only thing that's definite. I mean, we don't know if we're going to walk out that door. We can't say it, we're definitely going to walk out. I mean, an earthquake could happen, this whole thing could, you know, in the next few minutes. We don't know. I mean, maybe some people do who have clairvoyance. They know what's coming next, you know. But for us at our level, our wisdom's blocked. So we don't know what's beyond the tip of our nose, you know, like what's happening a few seconds ahead. But something we do know is that we have to face that. You know, we have to face that. So what is that? And why are we not facing that more? And how can, in the Buddhist practice, when we face it in a realistic way, a practical way, we embrace that more, how is that going to help us in our spiritual practice? How's that going to empower us? Even if it doesn't, even it's not spirit, just live more authentically with the thought of death. Many people we know who have near-death experiences, they completely change their lives, you know, become more compassionate, more open to others. Does anyone had that, a near-death experience? Anyone online? So, or if you end up with like this sickness, you get cancer and you've got like a year or something to live, you know, you're told that. That's a good meditation. How does that change your, you know, I think it completely shifts your motivation for life. What becomes important? What becomes meaningful? What becomes the purpose of life? So it's very, very good to, you know, it's a direct challenge to sort of this attachment energy, maybe an unrealistic energy of approach to life. And it can really shift our motivation into something more virtuous, more meaningful purpose of your life. So I want to think about that a little bit more for next week. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that and then go into the two wisdoms of emptiness, selflessness to finish off, because it's our last class next week. But sorry, I didn't have a lot of time for questions. Does anyone have a question? Comment? Anything about death, comment we want to share? No. How many of us think about death kind of often? As we get older, we do. Okay, good. Teresa? You do, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I
course, 'cause
was
you're
raising
right.
my hand to say that I think
Oh,
about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, of course we have to, you know. But there's a ways that can go even deeper and deeper, you know. So we think about it a bit, but in how is that affecting our actions, your body, speech, and mind? Because the main thing is we think about it not to get depressed, but to actually, it's a way to inspire the mind, to open up the mind, to release attachment, to get to feel more like want to have a more virtuous, compassionate life. And maybe even definitely it's a bigger opening up into the our wisdom nature, because who dies anyway? We don't all completely die altogether. For holy beings, it's like taking off one dress and putting on another, you know. We're not quite there yet, but it's like changing clothes, His Holiness says, for holy beings, you know. So next week we'll go into just a little bit more death. It might be nice to hear from everyone next week, if we're feeling brave enough, how we think about death. Maybe you want to share that a little bit if you think about it for next week. I'd maybe like to start on just 2 or 3 of us sharing. If you don't want to, it's okay, but where we are, how do we think about death? How has it helped us so far? You can just put that down in your notes and maybe share for next week where we are with our death meditation, our death practice, thinking about death. If we're not anywhere, that's fine too, you know. But how could it maybe help shift our mind? Okay, so let's just take a couple of minutes to settle into our dedication. First of all, sorry, I did quite a lot of talking, but hopefully there was something there you could catch, 1, 2, 3 things that you can go away and chew on a little bit more. So what would that be? Can bring to mind anything you heard that maybe can help to influence and shape your life a little bit in the rest of the day, next few days during the week, but especially a little bit more contemplation on death, you know, how we approach that, how that can help us inspire the mind. How we need to waken up more of a sense of impermanence. How that's going to help break down difficult stuff that we are holding on to now, or we maybe hold on to on a daily basis, you know, that bring the mind down. We get trapped like a moth, you know, in the flame, that feeling, emotion, that situation in our lives. We get trapped into there, and then attachment, anger, stuff brews because of that, you know. So can we just release a little bit, recognize it's transient and permanent, and step back. So we can dedicate the class that ourselves and all beings may continue to reflect on such important topics, you know, as wisdom. Wisdom realizing impermanence, wisdom realizing our ultimate nature is selflessness. So it helps us to become a better person. Even we just get small insights, it's going to help us to become a better person, to become more kind, more soft, more patient, more compassionate. As we move through our own stuff, really compassion really starts to ripen in us when we recognize and kind of release our own stuff. Otherwise, compassion's kind of limited. So maybe all slowly move into these places of more patience, kindness, compassion, and gradually develop our minds, a deeper insight into emptiness, wisdom realizing our peaceful nature, our deepest peaceful nature. And we dedicate that for all sentient beings, all our friends, our family, community members, Sangha. May all beings experience the deep peace, bliss, and happiness of liberation. And also for healing in the world, you know, the world always needs a lot of healing. All sentient beings always need a lot of healing. For there to be no peace, no wars, famines, disease, sickness, any type of harm. And may all beings' wishes be fulfilled, all their good, positive wishes. May they always have the space to develop inwardly as well. And especially as we move into Sakadawa, this is from about 5 o'clock today, we have what we call the celebration of Buddha's birth and enlightenment. So it's a special holy day for the next 24 hours. So as much as we can in those 24 hours to create as much positive energy as possible, because we say during this time, all the positive energy multiplies 100 million times. So as much as we can engage in virtue, keep our mind positive, wholesome, study, practice, meditate, whatever we can do, has so much merit. So we may all engage in that as much as possible. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Nice to see you. We'll be seeing you soon.
So well, yes. I'm going to wait until you. Have you booked your flight?
Yes.
Oh, that's fine. Just check that there'll be one.
I mean, definite. You know, I'm saying definite. We just talked about impermanence. You know, but
That's what I'm saying. I'm
still not there yet.
Mind.
The flight's booked, and I'm planning on coming, but things could change. Things will change.
Exactly. Well, I look forward to seeing you anyway.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Take care. See you next week. Thank you.
See, that's
bye, everyone.
But
Bye.
you know, we still have to plan within the space of impermanence. It's a balance.